Hey, I try to bring something different, something, so you guys have known when I've talked on region calls before, there's some interaction. We will have, be prepared. There will be a little menti at the end here. You're going to need to have some focus and pay attention because you want to do well on the little menti at the tail end of this.
Dude, I'm winning.
You're going to, yeah, well, you could win. You possibly could win. Some of it's going to be anonymous though, so we'll let you know. But first, let me start off with this. Well, here's what I'd like you to do. Okay, just for me. If I've ever done a favor for you, or if you've learned anything from me ever, I want to ask you one favor for the next about 20 minutes, and that is I want you to put your Zoom on full screen. Put your Zoom on full screen. Probably you can have an idea why, because if your Zoom is on full screen, you can't see anything else. Okay, this is going to come full circle. For one of the reasons why, one of the things I'm going to be talking about. I call my message today two big things, okay? Because really I'm going to just be talking about two really big things. And let's get into it, okay? I remember asking, someone asking a CSP, and I wish I could remember who this was. It might have been Brandon or Deanna, or it was one of the people that have done some big things in the business. And they asked them, what advice do they wish they'd been given when they were started as a new rep? And I kind of want you to ask yourself the same thing. What advice do you wish you'd have been given, or do I wish I would have been given when I was a brand new rep? And I've thought of this a lot personally, and interestingly enough, this answer that the CSP gave was my same answer. And your answer might be different, or you may not really know, work harder, make more phone calls, whatever. Those are things maybe we should have done. But this is a mindset thing, okay? And here's the answer that the rep gave. It says, I said, I wish that someone would have told me I should act as if I'm going to be here for longer, okay? Because if a rep comes into the job, imagine you guys, if you'd have done all your initial demos, your initial 100 demos that you did, if you'd have had the mindset that, hey, I'm going to be a Cutco rep here for at least 10 years, would it have gone differently? Would you have treated customers differently? Would you have tried to cultivate relationships in a different way? Okay, so kind of with me, a couple of head nods or things like that would be helpful. And what I call this is vision. Okay, this is if a rep had a better vision of their future. If you remember when we did, some of you may have never done this, but it used to be Marie who did training. We had all these training videos. Many of you have seen them of Marie talking about training. One of the things she talks about is if you just are here and you just to try it out, right? Especially if you tell customers that, well, I'm just going to try it out, see how it goes. People aren't going to want to buy from you, right? Because it's just not, it doesn't really seem like you're invested into the thing as a rep, okay? So anyway, that was the advice. And so imagine if all of our reps could start that way. I don't know if there's any way to do that because reps are going to think what they're going to think, and we can influence this only to a certain point. But when I think about vision, I want to think about vision as a manager, okay? And I want you to, I had a conversation recently with somebody talking about, they've been talking to some of our managers, and they didn't think that the managers had a vision of themselves very, really long-term in the business. They may not have a plan to do something else necessarily, but I want you to ask yourself this question, and you may have never asked yourself, can I see myself as a division manager someday? Okay, I will tell you that when I was new, until the end of my branch summer, I didn't really think that. And something very specific happened at the end of, I was asked a question toward the end of my branch summer, that helped me shift my mindset. Now, I didn't think at that time I would become a division manager, because in my mind, oh, division manager, they're like a big deal, and I'm just me, I'm just a regular guy that, has all kind of problems and challenges and things in my life. But it's a worthwhile question to ask, because if you were to act as if you are going to be here for 10 more years, every day, like today, tomorrow, this week, while you're at a conference, while you're on a meeting like this, if you're imagining, hey, I'm at least going to be here for 10 years, 10 more years, it changes how we think about what we're doing. I cannot tell you how many times, but I can tell you probably it's at 50% of the SLCs that I've been to, some person gets up on the podium and gives a talk. I think specifically about Brian Hurlman. I think specifically about Jeff Gamboa. I think, way farther back than that. Those are just a couple of the names that some of you guys might know. And I think about people talking about this mindset shift that they had in their life, that they weren't just here for now. Like, they decided to do it. Mark Lovis used to say, the decision to do is the most important decision, right? And if I go in it with a mindset like that, it's going to change certain things. And this is what I want to talk about. Here's how I think it would change. Number one, I think it would change how we think about getting better. just getting better at the job. If I'm going to be here for 10 years, now let's say, I didn't have the paychecks I wanted to have this summer. Okay. I didn't have the development, but think of something that didn't go as well. Well, I don't want to do that again for 10 more years, right? I want that to be better. Okay. And so having this mindset of getting better. Now, here's just a couple ideas. I would say to take learning seriously, right? Any opportunity to learn is serious. In fact, probably the most important thing that we do in our week or our day is to learn something new. And yeah, maybe even more important than doing an interview. But this Zoom meeting, for example, one of the reasons I had you go full screen, it forces you to stay focused on this. Conferences, when people go to conferences, I'll tell you, I get really excited when I see a rep or a manager sitting with their team taking notes. And you know what? Managers that sit with their team and taking notes, all their reps are sitting with their team typically taking more notes, right? I love to see when people are taking those things seriously. I love to see when managers are going to the round tables, right? And at COC specifically in the morning. The vectoradvantage.com, you guys, the 360 learning portal. This thing is pretty great. Okay. It's pretty great. We don't really know how great it's going to be, but it's pretty great so far. And your division managers, some of them have gone through their training with Shelby. They get to see what you guys are doing, like how much time and energy you're spending in this. And I know this is going to take some time probably to get a habit of wanting to participate in that, but this has a lot of potential to help refine and define the way we train people in the future. And then also when it comes to getting better, it's something that needs to be consistent. Like I'm not saying, for 6 days in a row, I read 10 pages in a book. That's not consistency. Consistency is for 4 straight years, I never went a day without at least reading 10 pages. Okay. Then we're talking about something being consistent. Just recently, one of the people I follow gave this message on consistency, the value of consistency. You may have heard of Stephen Pressfield. Is an author that wrote a book called The War of Art, not The Art of War by Sun Tzu, but The War of Art. And it mainly is written to creative types, people who write and paint and things like that. And he was basically talking about writing. And the biggest obstacle to being a writer, to really doing just about anything, is not learning how to be consistent. And this speaker talked about athletes and business people and relationships. You got to be a good husband or a good wife every day, not only 4 days a week, right? If you're a surgeon, you got to be good. You got to be a good on your A game pretty much all the time, right? You can't be inconsistent surgeon. That would be pretty detrimental. Something I learned early on, all development begins with self-development. I figured I'd put that up there in case somebody had never heard that. Okay, all development of your team, all development of your business, all development of your own personal relationships, all development of your ability to help your children become better, it all starts with our own desire and pursuit of that. And really what that all comes down to is self-management. I'm going to talk more about this later. Okay. So after get better, the second thing is to treat people right. Okay. To treat people right. I can't overemphasize this enough. People are complex and intricate beings, and are in people's minds. Who knows, what's happening in your minds right now, just listening to me talk. But when we talks to our reps. So a few things I want to mention when I talk about treating people right, because most people probably think they treat people right. Like, I'm a good person, I treat people well. But think about, do I treat people well even when they're not around? Okay. I think back to, I want to say it was Don Frieda, the founder of Vector. It was either Don Frieda or Mike Lancelot. Dan, you may remember hearing a message where this was talked about. And it talked about a manager joking around with a couple of his assistant managers. Okay, just joking around about a rep. Okay, about a rep who had done something silly or done something stupid, or who knows what, made some mistake, and they were kind of laughing at the person, kind of making fun of them in a lighthearted way. They weren't like being racist or anything, dramatic, but they were just kind of, talking about that person, not in a way that they would have talked about that person if they were in the room. Okay, and one of the assistant managers left and went somewhere, and they mentioned thinking about that conversation they'd had with their manager and having this thought, I wonder if they talk about me that way when I'm not around. And I want to point out, you guys, that if you are thinking about 10 years and maybe you're going to be a division manager someday, every little interaction that we have with our people, every little interaction you have with each other, with other district managers, people remember stuff. They remember, and an impression is formed about who we are. So, and Mike Lancelot even called me out personally on this in a conversation I was having at an SLC in Scottsdale. I remember the lighting. I remember how all the things around me. I don't remember who else was in there, who else was in the conversation besides Mike Lancelot and me. But I remember we were having a conversation and Mike Lancelot basically called me out for talking about somebody, a rep in my division. And we weren't hammering the guy, but anyway, I'll never forget the feeling of being, the realization that I had that, man, I'm not really, that's not really the way I would be talking about this guy if he was right here. So anyway, here's just some ideas, and these came from a lot of different places. One was from a talk I looked up by Dan. Dan gave it a few years ago, so about some leadership principles, but encourage the heart. Okay, when we talked about treating people right, that's what we got to do. We got to encourage the heart. You want to think to yourself, and this is for everybody. This is for division managers, region staff, the newest person on here. Do people feel better after I've talked with them? Do they feel more encouraged, more confident? We need to ask ourselves that. And that comes from encouraging the heart, finding the good, finding good things. If I've got a rep and they've been in the business for 2 weeks and they've had their closing percentage is 10%, their average number of recommendations is 0.5, and all these things. There's plenty of things it's easy to be a critic. It's easy to find things that aren't going right. But it takes someone special, someone that really genuinely understands relationships to find something that rep has done. They're early to every single meeting. Hey, Johnny, I just want to let you know, I really appreciate you being early to every single meeting. I recognize you're not the top rep, but I really appreciate that about you. Right? That right there, it's almost impossible if that rep maintains that low closing percentage and that low average order, because now there's something really positive about that person that I brought up. Build people's confidence. That's what we're trying to do. Appreciate people and make sure that they know it. Make sure that they know they're appreciated. And our job is just to make people feel special. You've heard a lot of these things before, but I need a reminder on this all the doggone time. Here's the thing that was told me that changed my thinking at the end of my branch summer. My division manager at the time, I can't remember the details of the conversation, but he basically said this. He said, hey, look, we were talking about treating people well. It's similar to what we were talking about. And he said, you never know who's going to work for you someday. You never know who's going to work for you someday. And I don't know why that has stuck with me for, since that moment. And when you want to treat people as if they're going to be an employee of yours someday, right? Other district managers, you never know. And give you a lot of examples of that. The other way to look at that, by the way, maybe a person doesn't have the confidence that they're going to be the big boss or the boss of other people someday. It might be this: you never know who you may work for someday, right? What if you train some rep and they go on to do something really big and huge, and then they want to hire you for something, or they might want to hire you. This is the story of Mark Zuckerberg and Andrew Bosworth, right? Andrew Bosworth is worked for somebody who basically he was a lab assistant and Zuckerberg was in one of Andrew Bosworth's, I think his robotics lab or something like that. And Zuckerberg was just impressed with the way this guy carried himself and who he was. And because of that, and Andrew Bosworth, I don't know if he was thinking this, this guy, I might work for this kid someday. I'm going to treat him right. But he must have been just doing that in general, and it made him a billionaire. I assume a billionaire. So I said I was going to talk about self-management a little bit, and I want to talk about personal productivity. And I want to talk about focus. Hey, I got a confession to make. I want to say I have a problem, but I don't like to use the word problem, even though this to me seems like a problem. But I think we all probably share this, a focus problem. Okay. A challenge with focus. Let me break down a little scenario for you. You're working on something, maybe you're adjusting a script on training. I was doing something this morning, in fact, and I was thinking, I was working on some slides for a meeting or something like that. Maybe you're working on team meeting slides, or maybe you're working on trying to do some 360 learning portal stuff, and something comes in your head real quick and you say, oh, I need to let somebody know about this thing. Okay, this happens on meetings all the time. I have to meet this morning in the DVM meeting. Oh, I need to let Hans know something, right? And so I went to open up my text messages real quick. I'm thinking, I'll just do this real quick. And I open up to go send a message to Hans. And there's 3 text messages that I haven't seen yet. Okay. And I thought, well, I'll just knock these out real quick. And I see I open this one, then I open this one, then I open this one. And then one of these things they need something. I can get that from Vector Connect. So I go to Vector Connect to find that thing that they need. And anyway, I don't know if this happens to you, but 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes goes by, and I've just completely blown it. Rather than just make a note, maybe, hey, send Hans this, have a little notepad to do this. Dave Powders has a 360 learning portal training on being indistractable. Okay, indistractable. And I went through this this weekend. It's great. It talks about batching your tasks, right? So if I'm going to do email, and this is something I'm working on, I'm only going to open my email 3 times a day. Okay. And it's at a specified time when I'm going to open my email. I'm not going to have any of my text message alerts on, right? I'm impressed. I used to be impressed when people like text them and they text me right back. Now that you guys are not going to text me right back now. But I realized that person is probably not being as productive as they possibly could if they're so distracted that they can respond to a text message right then. They weren't doing anything deeply focused. So I'm telling you, I have an issue with this, and I don't have all the answers, and I'm working on getting the answer. But batching tasks is one. It starts with this focus. I think starts with busting this myth of being busy. Okay, I know we like to say we're busy. I have an idea to ban the word busy from my vocabulary. Okay, as far as me talking about myself. Okay, in fact, I doubt any of you have ever heard me complain about being too busy, or you ask me how I'm doing and I say busy, right? You're not going to hear me say that. Okay, I sure hope. Okay, because I tried years ago to stop using that as an excuse, because that doesn't do me any good. Okay, and it's not true. It's a lie. Here's what being busy really is. We tell ourselves that we're busy because it's easier to be busy than to admit to other people and admit to ourselves what our priorities are and what they should be and what the difference is between the two. Okay. I think that's from the book Indistractable, Dave, if I'm not mistaken. This is a concept I want you to understand. Whenever you don't do something, whatever that something is, go to a party, could be anything in your life, it's because you've chosen to do B instead. Okay, understand that. If I don't do one thing, it's because I've chosen to do another thing, one thing that I could have done. Okay, I'm not saying, we have to think about this within reason. What we have to do is we have to be honest with ourselves, first ourselves, then with other people, and accept that I decided not to prioritize A in my life. When I say I couldn't do demos, if I was a rep, or if I'm a manager, I didn't get to my PRs, whatever it could be, right? Well, it's because I did something else. Maybe I was on Instagram, maybe it was on TikTok. I don't know what it was, but I did something else with my time, right? And understanding that as a concept. So always being busy. Here's what this has become in our society. It's become admirable because it's an admirable way for people to avoid themselves, right? Avoid just being with just themselves from time to time, because sometimes we need to just sit in quiet and meditate. It's an important part. The most successful people don't get everything done; they get the right things done. This is what's important. You guys, Warren Buffett doesn't complain about being busy. In fact, Darren Hardy. I included here in a little resources for you. I've got a Google Drive with 6 things in it that you can access after this. But Darren Hardy, who you may or may not know, but he's interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people, top CEOs, Fortune 500 CEOs. And he says, never has he interviewed a successful CEO and have they ever talked about being busy. And I promise you those people are getting a lot more done with their days than we are. So stop being busy. Okay, start being selective. This is the solution to being busy. Okay, starting to be selective. There's 6 things in this Google Drive, and feel free to look at this if you like. If you want to get this later, I can get it to you. But there's a Google Drive. It's got a video by Darren Hardy. It's about 4 minutes long, asking a question about being busy. Simon Sinek video about cell phones just is freaking remarkable. It's about 15 minutes, 11 minutes long, I think. And then there's a philosopher's notes on Indistractable, the book, and on the book Hyperfocus. And a philosopher's note is like a 5-page PDF summary of the book. Okay. And it also included in there is an audio of those 2 things, of the philosopher's notes. And you can read them or listen to the audio. Or here's a little reading hack. Anytime you buy a book you want to read, also get the audio with it and listen to the audio while you read it. This is something that's really helped me stay focused on the book. Okay. Because when I just audio, I don't get it all. When I just do the book, I don't get it all either. But this has really helped out a lot. Well, there's not time for my survey. So I guess if anybody wants to do it, we could, but we could save it for another time. Okay, but there's a nice little survey we were going to do on Menti, but I ran out of time because I got a little carried away with some other things. Dan, I'll end it right there.
Great stuff, Brad. Thank you very much for sharing all that. I think that was very helpful for people to hear. I saw a few nuggets being proclaimed in the chat, and definitely some really good stuff for sure. So thank you, Carson and Grace and Baker, for typing in your acknowledgments in the chat. I always like to see when people are getting good stuff, when that pops up in there. I know I got a few good nuggets as well, and great reminders, and like just such important stuff for us to all keep in mind. So Brad has what I like to call infinite wisdom that comes from many years of experience doing many things, dealing with many people. There is a lot of insight in that cranium there that we can all gain insights from, gain ideas from, and learn from. And I always appreciate being able to have Brad share stuff on the programs. All right. Folks, we will have a region Zoom call next week on Tuesday. We're going to walk through COC next Tuesday so that you know what to expect, how to make the most out of it, how to make sure your reps make the most out of it. And we'll also talk a little bit about manager finances next Tuesday, including personal finance. I would encourage you to take some time in the next 7 days to just review your personal expenses so that if I were to ask you, hey, how much do you spend on X? You could answer that question with a good degree of certainty on most of the standard expenses that you have in your personal life. We'll dig into that a little bit next week as well and give you some ideas about how to be better at managing your own finances. All right. So those are a couple things that are going to happen next week on our call. The call after COC, by the way, we already have Phil Bolander scheduled to pipe in, who has had a breakthrough summer in his pilot office and in his division. He has had great fast start productivity all throughout the summer division wide, and his pilot is going to win the Silver Cup in new business for the year. So he is on for September 19th, the Tuesday after COC. So we've got good stuff coming up for you guys in the next couple Zoom calls region wide. So we'll look forward to seeing you next Tuesday, same time, same place. And I look forward to seeing you all in person in Las Vegas. All right, everybody. Thank you.